Okay, hello students. This is PowerPoint about the poem At Home by Christina Rossetti. A little bit of context if you want to put this poem into the development of Rossetti as a poet and as a person. This is 1858, Rossetti is 28. I think we can say this is when she's younger, less completely writing about religious ideas, and as we'll see when we go through this poem's got a bit more of maybe a gothic thing going on. Okay, so not every Rossetti poem can we name the poetic form, but I think this poem can be called a dramatic monologue. It's a new poetic form developed in the Victorian period in which a fictional character speaks in the first person. They reveal their character through what they say. Setting is described in some detail, other voices are reported, and there is narrative. So similar to an apple gathering. Bit less narrative here, but still, I think you can call it dramatic monologue. So what's it about, or what's going on? The speaker of this poem is a spirit / ghost, and she appears to have returned to see what her friends are doing in her absence. They are enjoying all the pleasures life has to offer. Specifically, she sees them feasting and planning to go for a walk. The ghost spirit learns a harsh lesson, which is that they're not thinking about her, talking about her. They don't appear to be remembering her. This poem does not seem to work with the Christian idea of the afterlife, i.e. you die and you go to heaven, or, as we know, Christina Rossetti believed, you fall asleep, you have your soul sleep, and then you wake up in heaven on Judgment Day. It's more like a superstitious ghost story. It's got that sense of that folklore idea of the dead returning to the places where they lived. In terms of structure, we have iambic tetrameter, which just means one less foot, one less double syllable than iambic pentameter, I think, maybe two less. Anyway, let's have a go. When I was dead, my spirit turned. Yeah, so we're getting 4 pairs. Except for the final line, which is 1 foot shorter. Now remember, saying that is not the most exciting thing to say in an answer, but if you can comment on the effect of it, i.e. you could suggest it gives a rather downbeat feel at the end of each stanza, then you can link that to the tone and the content of the poem. So if we go, they sang, they jested, and they laughed, for each was loved of each. Yeah, you can hear that, just only 3 strong beats in that last line. We have 4 equal 8-line stanzas. We just have 1 rhyme, so it's not so much that it matters that it's A, B, C, B, D, B, E, B. It matters that we've got that B rhyme, 1 rhyme per stanza, and it's repeated 4 times. Once again, that on its own, not so exciting, but what can it achieve? Well, it gives a very long line. If you think that, the line itself is half of it, but if you think about your reading and you're hearing the rhyme, then it gives this very long pace. And that's often reflected by enjambment in the unrhyming lines. So if you think, when I was dead, my spirit turned to seek. Yeah, that's the unrhyming line, the A, the turned, and it goes to seek the much frequented house. Full big colon there. I passed the door and saw my friends feasting. Yeah, friends is the unrhymed word, goes over, beneath green orange, boughs, semicolon. So we hear that strong house and boughs. So what can you say about that? Melancholy tone, reflective tone, because of the length of the line. In terms of the narrative structure, in terms of actually structuring the content, stanza 1 sets up the scenario. That's the stanza in which we read the spirit watching her friends feasting. Then stanzas 2 and 3 report their speech. We're not really getting into the spirit's mind at this point. We're hearing what they're saying. They are optimistically planning for the next day. Midway through stanza 3, the poem returns back to the spirit. When we get her looking at them. Their life stood full at blessed noon. Only I had passed away. So we're getting interiority for the spirit's voice. For the friends, we don't know what's going on inside their minds. We just hear what they say. And what she reflects on is her isolation and her difference now that she's dead. Stanza 4 is the most melancholy. The spirit leaves this familiar world behind. So remember, we can talk about two kinds of imagery. Descriptive imagery, where the writer just describes stuff that is actually there, and then figurative imagery, when things are compared to things that aren't there. Sometimes that can be tricky. So if you think about in the first stanza, descriptive detail, the orange boughs, it might be more symbolic than realistic. Yeah, the green-orange boughs sounds quite Mediterranean. They've got wine, plums and peaches. We've got a very summery feeling. That could be symbolically the idea that summer is the height of your life, full bloom. Just like the metaphor, their life stood full at blessed noon. Yeah, it's summer and it's noon. The place where they go to walk, the featureless sands, you might think about how the seashore is a liminal space. Yeah, one of those spaces that's between two states, the sea and the land. The seashore moves between the two, maybe fitting for a ghostly story, although the ghost herself isn't actually hanging out there. We have this very vivid image of the spirit visiting the much frequented house, so a house to which she had frequently gone as a visitor when she was alive, and she finds the friends there at their table. And that scene is described in great detail in stanza 1, and in stanza 4 we're reminded that that's where we are literally standing, with the mention of the tablecloth, and reminded that she's looking at her friends around the table. So the friends literally are planning a walk, but that walk could be seen as a metaphor for the whole of life. The idea that you have to walk a long way, but you will achieve your success, you will achieve your aim. Before the turn of tide, we will achieve the eyrie seat. The eyrie is where an eagle nests, and eagles nest very, very high. So these young people are aiming high, they've got these high hopes and this optimism. So that is definitely, that sounds like a symbol, doesn't it? Some of the diction that helps add to this tone and these different moods in the poem, the language associated with the ghost. She talks about her spirit and lots of words past and passed away, as we know, a euphemism for death and dying. Many of the verbs show the friends living life to the full, quite like in Goblin Market. Feasting, they're sucking the juice, sucking the pulp of plum and peach. They sang and jested and laughed, all the pleasures of life and friends. There's the repetition of tomorrow in the second stanza. Tomorrow we shall be, tomorrow shall be like today. Tomorrow, they said, and tomorrow, yeah, we have 4 repetitions of tomorrow, stanza 3 and stanza 4. Emphasising how they have a future, but not just that, but they look forward. They're not looking back. So yesterday is an antonym, is the opposite of tomorrow, and that's the spirit, repeats that antonym because they only belong to the past. I was of yesterday. No one spoke of yesterday. So, bit of a narrative. We've got these characters. They're not fully fledged, but we've learned something about them. They're enjoying all the pleasures of life. They're eating and drinking sweet and pleasant things. Perhaps the way that they're sucking the pulp means they're getting every little bit of pleasure out of what they're doing. The adjectives around them are mostly positive, honest and strong, pleasant and blessed are the words associated with those people. Loved, each was loved of each, their honest chat. They seem to be full of ambition and optimism. They're planning for the future, maybe thoughtless, yeah, because the whole point of the poem is this rather negative, pessimistic, gloomy reaction to the spirit that in their joy and in their pleasure of life, they've forgotten her who's gone. So what we learn about the spirit, she came to see how they have reacted to her death. We can assume, we can infer. Much frequented house means that she visited often. This is a very common motif in a ghost story. Yeah, the ghost returns to see how people are reacting to their death. I think a lot of you read Christmas Carol. Yeah, one of the shocking things that really shocks Scrooge is when the ghost shows him how people react to his death. With heartlessness and even pleasure. So it's by the end of the 3rd stanza she realises that she's been forgotten. And there are words with connotations of cold associated with the spirit. Shivered is repeated, and the word chill as well. I shivered comfortless. I, all forgotten, shivered. The ghost chooses not to enact a ghostly vengeance. You know, sometimes the ghost in a ghost story, finding they've been forgotten or ignored or their wishes not followed, then follows with some haunting. And that's hinted at in the fact that this ghost chooses not to do that. I shivered comfortless, but cast no chill. Yeah, I could have, but I didn't want to, and I didn't do that. I cast no chill across the tablecloth. So we end with this very gloomy idea that she hasn't made much impression. And we get that in the final simile. Like the remembrance of a guest that tarrieth but a day. Yeah, she's made so little impression on them, they hardly remember her, as if she was someone who only stayed once. So the spirit is particularly loveless. Yeah, so we get all the love that the friends have, and she describes herself comfortless, and she is lacking in love. I wonder if she doesn't use the word loveless. That's a word that a critic has used. So the friends share it and she doesn't have it. Each was loved of each. Oh, there it is. I from whom love had passed away. So that passed away, yeah, is linked to death, but here it means love. She died and there's no love for her now. She describes herself as comfortless and also all forgotten. So if you think about how key a theme that is in Rossetti's, both forgetting and remembering. Yeah, memory is a big thing. So some context here. This poem does not have an orthodox Christian idea of death and afterlife. Remember that Christina Rossetti lives a very long time. Her mind and ideas can change, but also she's writing different genres of poetry. This one's much more like a story. She's not trying to teach a big Christian lesson. She's writing a nice, it's a bit gloomy, isn't it? She's writing a sad little story. So some of the context here is the Victorian Gothic and the rise of the ghost story as a very popular genre in Victorian England. And remember we talked about spiritualism, and this spiritualist idea that spirits would return to visit those whom they had loved. We know that Dante and William attended seances, and they will have spoken to Christina about it. So this was something very much in the zeitgeist, in the air around Christina Rossetti's time.